last week's program. We had some technical difficulties, but we're here this week and we'll continue our discourse on the political, social, economic situation here in Guyana. And to do that with me this evening is Brother Tacuma Ogunseye. I want to welcome you to the program, Tacuma.
It's always a pleasure to be here so that we could spend some time discussing with our audience.
Well, so many things are happening in Guyana. The major concern at the moment is the action of the police. Brother Ogun, we have expressed the fear on this program about the regional force that you were talking about. I know there is this SWAT team that they have that seems to have gone amok. The recent killing of Orin Boston of Dartmouth is of a major concern, but of course this is not the first incident since the PPP came into office in relation to the killing of a citizen. We of course had Peter Headley, 45-year-old who was living in Dowling Street, and remember the incident of him being placed in a private vehicle, policeman driving that vehicle. His friend was placed in the police vehicle. He was placed in a civilian vehicle driven by a policeman, one policeman behind him, and he was shot from behind. Nothing came out of that. Then we had the incident of the young man who was, people are arguing, ran over by a police vehicle and who was killed. And even last night I was watching the Facebook live, and somewhere in Sophia or South Rumville or someplace, they stopped the car, searched it, found nothing, and began to maltreat the driver of the vehicle. The people who were there saying that you found nothing in the man's car. So the man said, well, I mean, do whatever you want. And then the officer pulled his gun on the guy for no apparent reason at all. So we want to know what is really happening with the Guyana police force, whether we're going back to those dark days of the 23 years of the PPP. I don't know what your explanation is, what your thoughts are.
We have been grappling with this matter on many programs, and we had predicted that the best behavior of the PPP government will be the first 6 months of them coming into office, and then once they became confident that they have, the leverage of the state under control, then you will begin to see the PPP in the true colors. And one of the sad things about the PPP rule, which is uncontestable, is that once the PPP is in office, they encourage, and I'm being deliberate, they encourage police excesses. And more so, they encourage the police to target African Guyanese community and African Guyanese persons, and more importantly, African Guyanese male. I mean, I have been dealing and watching at police behavior for many decades. And I'm convinced that the PPP believes that one of the most effective ways to intimidate the African population politically is to use the police force, to engage in open hostility and brutality and murder against Africans. And they seems to believe that will keep the African community in the place politically and will guarantee the PPP, some amount of peace, that the Africans will be so intimidated that they would hardly think about protests, because the PPP reckons that one of the weaknesses in this equation is that in the urban communities and communities where Africans preside in large numbers are potentially the hot spots, for resistance against the PPP. And they seems to have long decided that the best way to deal with African potential resistance is to use the police force, which constitute a large number of African persons, against African people. And this is calculated ethnic political genocide. It is a politics of ethnic genocide when a set of politicians deliberately decide in an ethnic political situation to cultivate deliberately police forces and security forces from the other side, okay, outside their base, and to use them, corrupt them, and to use them, okay, to oppress and to shoot and to kill their own. It is a double kind form of oppression.
Similar to the apartheid regime
in South Africa.
In South Africa.
You know, and this is a matter, in my view, you know, after being in Guyanese politics over half of a century, I think I could, you know, break with the traditional thinking on these matters, because I have seen its manifestation at various levels and for protractively long period. And I believe that this matter has to be resolved by African people, because at the end of the day, I don't know the ethnicity of the person who shot on Boston. His wife said the person was bulky. Indian person could be bulky, Amerindian person could be bulky, African person could be bulky, mixed person could be bulky. Okay, so we have no indication of the ethnicity. But if I have to place a bet, I will bet that when it is finally revealed, it's going to be a black police officer.
But do you think it will be revealed? I mean,
well, we have to make it reveal.
They don't reveal these things. All they say that these people are under close arrest. For the guy in Kitty, Headley, we don't know who the policemen were.
No,
right? But for the incident with the young man who was run over by the vehicle, you don't know who the policemen were. All right? For this Boston's case, you are not going to know who the people are. We need to know. As you were saying, that we need to know who these people are.
Yes, but if we don't know, it's simply because the opposition are not doing our work. Because you can't have a black institution where the majority of police forces are black people, and police officers engage in murder of black people, and the black community have no way of knowing, have to wait for the official identification of the person. I refuse to buy that. And if that is our condition, it speaks a lot about our politics and our not being serious on these matters. And this is why I'm saying that while I'm willing to condemn the government and willing to condemn the police leadership, I am prepared to be more hard on the African community, who seems to not to be taking a firm stand on these kinds of killings. We have to make it clear to African persons in the police force in general, but I am not concerned about Indian police at this time. I am not concerned about Amerindian police. I am concerned at this point with African police. And as I said, I don't know where there's African police involved, but based upon my experience with these matters over many decades, I will bet my last dollar that you're going to see when it is being revealed is an African officer. But generally, the problems of African people being shot by police, in the majority of cases, is African officers shooting African people. And I believe that this is a matter, as an African community, we have to stop. They must know that once they shed African blood, they can't be welcome in our community like if nothing happened. We have to draw a line in the sand. And I'm very firm on this because I am convinced that if African officers in the police force adopt a policy of a no-no in terms of shooting and killing African people, I doubt Indian and Amerindian officers would go about the place shooting African people. So to solve the problem, we have to recognize the problem as our problem. And we have to find ways and means to make our people understand that if you commit these heinous crimes against us, you're not welcome in our community. And I think once we draw the line in the sand with the African police, the others will fall into line.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I have been looking at some of the responses on Facebook, And there was a particular young man who seemed to be very closely associated with the youngster who was run over by the motorcycle, and he was vehement in his, response, claiming that, he said a lot of stuff, and among what he said is that we're not going to take it. You understand? And I like that message, but what he said is that you get guns robbing people all about the place and police killing black people. You got to use the guns for the right thing. You understand? And you see where it's going. You understand?
It's making us remember what happened in 2002, 2005 coming onwards.
That's what I'm saying.
And and the shooting of Shaka Blair in Buxton and the subsequent development.
And this is only 1 year after.
You see?
You understand?
And and we have you see, I think that we have to use all our creativity, to work up in the African community, a hate for such actions by the police, and particularly African police. And I think that we have to call upon our cultural activists to be creative. I was reading some of the responses to with the former MP song upon the Minister of Education, and the kind of responses you get from PP people. It seems to really hurt them.
I see.
And I think that we have to use the Boston wife said that her husband was sleeping, and she was just sleeping alongside him, and when they broke up the bedroom door, they immediately shoot the man, and the last thing the man said was ouch, ouch. Now we got to turn that ouch into a rallying cry of despair against the police and the government. Now our creative artists have to, I will ask them to find ways of means to turn it into music. You got to write a poster with the last words that Boston utter when that bullet penetrate his body. You have to use these cultural forms as act of open rebellion against the police and the system.
But one of the things that I'm concerned about, apart from not being able to identify so far who this individual was that shot Boston, and who the individual was that shot Headley, we are still not clear on who sent those gentlemen to commit that act. We've had cases before where the police force was used by businessmen, by people in the underworld to eliminate other people, right? And fingers are pointing. I saw allegations being made against one assistant commissioner who was involved in other killings, the killing of the 3 people in Linden and so on. But like you said, if we have this information and we're certain about it, these people must be made to pay in some way. We can't tolerate this kind of wanton killing of our people. I mean, it's really outrageous.
You see, I think in this case,
we got to nip it in the bud. But what we also have to do, Ogun, because what is the reason for this SWAT team that they're talking about? Are we a country that, are prone to having terrorists and people, basically holding a bank and people as hostages and so on and these kinds of things? What is the reason for this team?
You see, I don't even want to go down the road, because they will always argue, state will always argue that they have to be, be futuristic in their planning, and they have to train people for, unexpected realities, and they will want to justify a SWAT team in that context. But the issue is SWAT team is not supposed to be dealing with. If you get to ordinary matters, you get to report somebody engaged in contraband. I mean, and they got to do the SWAT team. They got the regional police in the area. You know, you could be sent to the suspect home and carry out investigation. But we're hearing that, you know, you're hearing all kinds of things. You're hearing that President Infant Ali went to Essequibo and he got reports or complaints from residents of some increase in crime activity, and people are trying to link the sending of the SWAT team from Georgetown to Essequibo, okay, as part of the government response to those complaints. But what worries me, even though I don't think that was necessary, because I think the local police is equipped to deal with that, but I'm trying to follow the dynamics of the engagement. We get enough information to tell us that this SWAT team was harassing a number of persons even before they reached the Boston home. And I'm concerned. I'm trying to work out. You supposed to be a set of professional officers. You break into people's home without warrant. You rush into a man's bedroom, you see him almost naked, lying beside his wife, and almost in a split second, you shot him and kill him. It seems to me that you go there to kill.
Yeah, that is
you don't go there to find anything, and this is what worry me, you know. And people are trying to link whatever instructions the SWAT team got somehow seems to have some political bearing on the president's experience in Essequibo. And I think that the president, as soon as he come back, he should see it as being extremely important to distance himself from the incident. You know, I think it is important that he distance himself from the incident, because, you know, while it is true that if a president complains, you know, from a given community about the rise of crime in the area, it is within his mandate to draw it attention of the police and to urge the police to try to address the matter. But when the police addressed the matter in the way in which this was being done, it raised a lot of political eyebrows, and I think it is important enough for President Ali disassociate himself publicly with that behavior, since it is being suggested that it came out of an initiative, okay, from him.
Yeah, but you know, the thing is, because what we understand too, Ogun, is that when the guy was shot, that the officers went outside and they began to argue among themselves. The suggestion that we're getting is that apparently, this is what people are saying, one individual probably was given a particular kind of instruction.
Yeah.
You understand?
That's how they operate.
Which the others were unaware of.
Yeah.
And so when he committed that act, he was following the orders that he was given. And so it left the others who were there, they are now victims of a planned assassination, right? And they too should be, you know, coming out
and speaking out.
Yeah. Because they have been involved, they're implicated by being there.
Yeah.
They are also
implicated.
A part of the act.
You see, that's how they operate. They will never tell everybody in the team what the heinous act will be, but the person who won't carry the heinous act will get his instructions, you know. So the behavior is consistent with the way they try to cover up and to create the possibility of deniability. But we have to hold the police force and the government accountable, because too often in these matters, and I think that the African community will have to take the lead to carry some, to engage in private charges against some of these officers. Not only those who actually do the shooting, but those who we could identify as giving the orders.
Yeah, complicit in the
complicit in the thing. We should make private criminal charges against them, and we should carry them to United Nations Human Rights. I think that this has to be the responsibility of the African community. Whether other Guyanese wish to associate with us, we don't mind, but we should not wait and until we develop national consensus on how to deal with this matter. This is our problem. We got to take the bull by the horn and to beat this thing back now. Because I'm telling you, if we don't get justice for the Boston's family, I'm telling you, 2 years from now, with this PUP government, we'll be talking something totally different. And I don't want to use the program to see what I anticipate will happen in the country. But I'm telling you, if they get away with this, it will be setting the stage for the emergence of what we had to deal with post 2002 coming up.
If it comes to that program, I would say that whoever the authors of the action, the response will be. I mean, and I don't mind saying this, that they have to be focused on their strategy in dealing with the situation, because you can't just allow it to happen, and you can't have a situation that is running amok and chaotic as would have happened in Buxton. I mean, it has to be a targeted response so that people understand that if you knock me, we knock you back, so that when we feel, you feel. That is what it has to come to. You know what I mean? And I mean, when I see the young people speaking out on Facebook, right, I am in total, empathy with them. I am in total, I mean, look, you don't want to be but if you're dealing with what we know preceded this era, we understand the historical context, and we see this PPP regime setting itself up for the same kind of action. We have to, from the inception, begin to send a clear message that it will not be tolerated.
Yeah. But you see, part of the difficulties we have in these responses, I mean, there's some officers which I have seen, which we know have been implicated in heinous actions against African people, and they survive the coalition government, the APMU AFC government. They should not be in the police force. You see, it is these double signals that comes from high up in the African leadership that create a lot of the problems. You see, we could see clearly when the PPP does something that is negative to us, but we don't see clearly when our own leadership, who is in a position to resolve some of these matters and to set some of these people as example, fail to act. We don't quickly recognize the implications for us over time.
So that the same name could be
same set of people could be repeating the same things
again.
And I think that as we criticize the government, we also have to be self-critical of the APMU AFC coalition government, which we were part. WP was part. They, under the Granger administration, they did some institutional things to strengthen the police and to beat back this hostile attitude of the police to citizens in general. But they made none of them public examples, for heinous crimes that they have committed. It's like they enter into a romance with these rogue cops that the PPP have cultivated over the 23 years. The APMU have entered into a romance with them. And now it is coming back to haunt us.
Well, you see, the other thing is, I mean, the target is always the African community. I mean, Buxton, for example, was always a target. You know, you had Golden Gun, you had Silver Gun, you had a whole lot of policemen who used to be sent to the vigilance police station, and every single night you were at a public occasion, a fete, sanctioned by the police, the people got permission for the dance, you stand up out there waiting to go in, police rush in with guns, beat up people. I myself was a victim of that. We had to protest at the Ministry of Home Affairs under Gadraj, you know, for them to stop coming into Buxton. At the time, Mr. Deon was the commander at they beat me with baseball bat all on my shin and so on and so on, because I said, man, this thing is nonsense, it had to stop. And I put up the resistance the evening, right? But they always are running into black communities as though black people are
The criminals.
criminals.
No, but they're telling you, as I told you earlier, it's part of the police, the PPP political response to the black community. Buxton is seen have evolved historically as an important African community politically that could set the pace of African attitude towards and resistance towards the PPP government. So all of the same thing with Georgetown. Georgetown historically has been the bastion of the PNC, and by extension the African community, and by extension the coalition base, which is the kind of striking force, okay, for the coalition or the PNC or the APMU, whatever configuration it is. And the PPP's response is that we got to tame those communities, and the way to tame them is to encourage the police to target them and to engage in hostile behavior, you know, in those communities. And unfortunately, because as African police, so if it was Indian police been doing that, we would have stopped it a long time. But it become more complicated when you have to deal with your own. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the major wickedness of the PPP's approach to this problem. They use their own to oppress you. So you get double oppression. And you get compromised, you got difficulties in deciding how to respond because it's your own brother, you know, shooting you and beating you. But if it was the Indian police keep shooting black people, we don't resolve the problem. But the reality is when you go to 90% of the case, it's African police shooting black people. Yeah. And that creates a real crisis in the African community, you know. And Africans, you know, feel extremely, since the PP came back to power, the level of fear and oppression in the African community is unprecedented. A lot of times people talk about the Indian community under the 28 years of PNC and electoral rigging and Burnham and all that. The Indians feel fearful. But people underestimate the level of fear and despair that PPP have over the 23 years, you know, and at present, okay, perpetuating in the African community. And because we don't control the press, they control the press. And their people control the press. They could keep their grievance, you know, in the public space. Mm-hmm. But we can't. And it creates an impression that the Africans either got short memory or we don't care, you know. But the hurt, I'm telling you, the hurt is serious. You know, and we have to let the nation know, because this here, I know, if this continue, there's going to be a response. The history of Africans dealing with oppression, we respond eventually.
I remember at Victoria, one policeman who was the champion of the PPP's cause, I can't remember his name, he's doing security work somewhere now. But his daughter was shot and killed in Victoria. So because of his action, his child became a victim. And then he went into Victoria and carried on, what do you call him?
I remember the incident, but I can't remember the name of the police officer
Yeah.
at present. But I remember the incident.
But you see, these things have far-reaching implications for innocent people.
You see, the
You
PPP wants to have it both with yeah? They want to have African people oppress African people, and in their calculation, it will create a lot of disunity in the African community, and that disunity will play to their political advantage.
But it spilled over.
You know, but
It's
it's backfire.
yes.
These things backfire.
You understand?
These things backfire. And
Because-
I have always been warning that to encourage African police to butcher African people, a time will come where they can butcher other people. And if the PPP believe that this policy of encouraging African police and security forces to disrespect African life, they're going to disrespect you people's life at some point. That is the dialectics of that kind of engagement. It's not going to stop at the African theater. It's going to spill over into you theater, because the culture of brutality and disrespect for life going to spill over. And because of the ethnic equation, it's going to be 1,000 times worse in you theater. So, you know, they're playing a very dangerous game. But I have said on this program, it is not me place to tell you people how to behave. I am more concerned in this part of my political life to deal with the African response and the African leadership, because I think that there's a big part of the problem. You know, there is a big part of the problem. And I don't mind being unpopular even among our own people for waging this battle, because I believe that we could stop these oppressiveness anytime we decide to stop it. If the leadership is formal and resolute, we stop it. And to the extent that it continues is because we allow it to continue.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. It calls for political direction, and that direction can come. We have enough people who are capable of strategizing to deal with this problem. All right, and the expertise is in abundance out here, and our political people can utilize that expertise, but they have never sought to do so. But what we need to do immediately is to demand that the name of that individual who committed the act, and possibly the entire team that went to Dartmouth, to the Essequibo, that they be revealed, so that people can know them.
But if
Right.
they don't reveal the name of this police officer who did the shooting, then the government is clearly covering up. Because to have an investigation, you have to investigate some individual, and it can't be a state secret. It passed the stage. It can't be a state secret.
But,
And to the extent that they try to make it a state secret, is clear evidence that they feel implicated in the crime.
So far, we have no idea. We
You know?
have no idea, and
We have no
it seems
public
as though
idea.
they're playing for time.
We have no public
You know?
idea. I will be surprised if we have no idea.
It is the same thing that happened with Headley. We don't know these things. All right. I mean, the public. It's not. Publicly
Yeah.
announced.
And that is because we have not made it public. Because I refuse to believe that the African political leadership and social leadership and everything, and the leadership in the police and all our contact with the police don't know who did the shooting. I refuse to believe that. But you see, we don't have the discipline and the organization, okay, to dissimulate this information as a matter of habit. We have become so conditioned to accept that form of oppression that we, to some extent, seems to become comfortable, okay, we're not doing what we ought to be doing. As soon as the police shoot somebody, the very same day, his name must be all over the place. There can't be a secret, man. It's only a secret if we in our community allow it to become a secret.
But the press also plays a role in
Yeah,
this.
but we don't control the press, so
You
I don't
let me tell
want to
you,
depend
you're
on them.
one of my most, an ordinary man commits a crime, and the reporter will say that David Jones from so was caught this morning in Kitty after he attempted to rob someone. When it's another person, the name is left out. All right, and you never hear who the individual is. Just a report.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of the report?
You see, that is the
Right.
level of racism you got that is almost become institutionalized in Guyanese press for some time now. And it's simply because the press is dominated by basically Indians and non-African persons, you know, and even where African persons have some control of some press. I think culturally and politically, we have found wanting of not being able to sufficiently follow up and to prosecute these matters. And it right back to the question of your economic dependency on state ads, on Indians' business support to keep your paper or your television station going. So you have to make it on healthy compromise. You see, so you see that's the way how oppression operates. It dismantles from the oppressed the basic tools, okay, to fight oppression, and it's always a major challenge. And many African reporters and media houses that may be under African control, they always have to be weighing to what extent we expose and we get involved, that we don't become looking too political with the consequences upon our, you know, our revenue and all of that. The Indians don't have that problem. So those are peculiar problems, you know, in this so-called democracy, you know.
Anyhow, I am making a public call here on this station for the Guyana Police Force to reveal to the populace the person whom they claim is under close arrest.
Yeah.
Right? So that we understand and we know that this action is being taken in the spirit of pursuing justice. All right? You can't just say, because you hear that the people are under close arrest, and that is as far as it goes.
Yeah.
All right? You don't know who it is, the whatever responsible, police responsibility, whatever they call the thing, that never provides a report. All right? Or if the report comes, it's 10 years afterwards and nothing happens. All right? The Office of Professional Responsibility or whatever they call it. All right? And we really cannot stand for that. We need to know who the culprits are. All right? So that we can be informed about the actions of these people. Okay? But indeed, yeah, you got anything else?
Yeah, we just want to formally extend the WP's solidarity with the Boston family. And we want to salute the people of Dartmouth who have rise up in his and his family's defense and have been making their voices heard. That is the only kind of protection we will have against these politically directed or motivated heinous crimes against our people. We have to, as a collective, rise up, and we will, and if necessary, we have to spread the rising up beyond Essequibo. You know, it is better you fight now and to end this matter than you wait and have to fight later. You have to pay a large and a higher price. You know.
Yeah, but
So, you know, I salute the people of Dartmouth, you know, for their resolve, and the WPA extend our solidarity with the family.
But both these guys were young African businessmen, eh? Headley, Boston, and we remember before the 2002 period when this whole thing started, Taps, you had this guy from that was owned these hotels, one on the East Coast, one on the East Bank. You had a number of African businessmen who became targets of what's his name, the guy that was part of this, that eventually got killed. He was heading the Fraser and these guys. All right. So, I mean, this is a replay. right? This is a replay of that period. And like I'm saying, we can't allow it to get to the stage where it had gotten at that time. And so people have to begin to, be ready
Right.
to take the kind of action that will put a stop to it, a halt to it. This Boston killing must be the last. All right? It must be the last.
And the WPA had put out a statement on the killing. It haven't been carried by the media in a big way. I see Starbuck News in an editorial make point a few points that the WPA made in its statement. We say there's a problem you have. That even when, we make statements condemning these actions to disseminate the information across the country, when the media don't cooperate and when the media is deliberately targeting the WPA
they become
for silence, they become complicit in the crime,
Yeah.
And that is why, when people try to press me on democracy in Guyana and the elections, having engaged in this struggle for over 50 years, I have seen all kinds of ramifications of a Guyanese problem. And if elections and democracy is going to lead to ethnic domination and to the destruction of African lives, the unwanted destruction of African lives, both by the police and by economic apartheid, I am not interested in that form of democracy. So nobody don't come to me and tell me and try to, make me feel conscionable on this question of democracy. Well, what I am seeing unfolding, before my very eye, is ethnic domination. And I'm a person who have, for the greater part of my youthful political life, fought side by side with the Indian community, the PPP, against Burnham and African excesses, and for fair and free elections and democracy. And so nobody can come and tell me about the virtues of that. I served a 3-year sentence in the struggle, the restoration of fair and free elections and Guyanese democracy. So now with the PPP is misgovernance and their brand, of democracy, which amongst the ethnic, setting the basis for ethnic domination, nobody don't come and ask Ogun anything about democracy at present. I ain't got no interest in it. I think it's a farce. Any claim about Guyanese democracy and good governance is a farce. It is a cover for ethnic domination.
In the context of the PPP.
Yes.
Well, we can lament the press for what they do, but the fact is we have to be very happy now that they don't have the kind of leverage that they had before, because we get ample coverage on our Facebook, Kidaki's Morning Time, Politics 101 and so on. So even though it's a big spoke in the wheel for them, because the kind of hiding of the news that they could have done before, it's not as effective. You see, the teacher strike struck all across the country, Region 9, Region 1, I got a young teacher from Ramadan who messaged me to say, look, I just came from protesting. They left Ramadan Secondary to go to Cameron Regional Office to protest.
Yeah.
Because they are in the news now. They're in the know. A few years ago when I used to go to Region 8, Paramakatoy and those places, when you got there, you were in a totally different world. You had no news. You didn't know what was going on outside. It was in a totally different world.
Yeah.
But today, the people have access to the internet.
Yeah.
And so they are au fait with current events in the country. And they are as politically aware as people in any other part of the country. And even the Indians whom the PPP sought to keep in a backward state, because they do that. They try to have them, you know, not knowledgeable about things, so that they can feed them what they want to. But all of these things now are basically, you know, being
Challenge.
challenged on, and so people are more conscious, people are more aware, and we have the opportunity to raise our voices. So when these youngsters get on Facebook and TikTok and air their grievances, and it begins to spread, like, the fact is, it's not only here that people are conscious of what is happening, but the entire world sees and knows and understands. So when we respond, they understand the reason for it. It cannot be hidden anymore. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That these people, this message about people being barbaric and you know, not cooperating with the government and all of these things, they can't hide under that cloud anymore. And that's a major plus for the boom in the social media and so on.
Until they begin to take steps to close it down,
Well,
which don't rule out,
they can
you know.
try. They can try. They can try.
All the dictators at some point, you know, it's reached a point.
Recently
And I've been listening to the Mandalal and some of the PPP persons on the pressures that they're feeling from the social media.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that they're working out
A strategy.
a strategy to deal with it, you know.
Only recently Cuba had banned Facebook and Instagram and so on, because the people were having an uprising in Cuba. And they were saying that they're using social media to, you know.
Yeah, you see, Cuba's a little different in that Cuba coming under American pressure and
I'm just saying, using it as, I'm not, you know, decrying, but I'm just saying that it's not something that is outside.
And it's not something difficult, not something that is easy to do.
Yeah.
It's not easy to suppress social media, but you know.
Even China, I mean, China doesn't have Facebook.
You know, not easy.
Right? China doesn't have Facebook and so on.
You know.
But they can try. And that is going to be another fight, because we will have to fight against that kind of suppression. But the media is in our hands now, and we have to use it as best as we can, so that when we take our action, people understand the reason for us taking that action. Because they used to go to Queens and all these places and tell the people there all kinds of nonsense. People who are not aware.
You see, there's we got to put aside some special program to deal with the African Indian dilemma. We can't deal with it at this program.
I know.
But you know, we have to find a way of begin to discuss this very frankly, so our Indian comrades could better understand the dangerous situation that the PPP is putting them into.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Because some of them just mouth a whole lot of stupidness, and they don't understand where it is leading. They don't seem to get the idea that this is a tragedy that is about to happen. Right? So they tend to want to urge them on, you know, and decry and ridicule when comments are made against the excesses of the PPP, you know, and they themselves are contributing to the dilemma, and are pushing this country down a road that we really don't want it to go. And so they have to understand that. All right? But yeah, like I'm saying, I mean, some things you don't want to say, but I'm going to close off on the Bostons while we offer our sympathy to the family, to say that this act must not go, right, in a manner that allows nothing to happen to bring redress to the family. Okay? It's really outrageous, and somebody has to feel somehow, somewhere, so that this thing doesn't continue. The COVID situation is of major concern now to us, because we get a sense, I mean, Frank Anthony is mouthing a whole lot of hogwash. But people who go to the COVID hospital and come out are telling you a totally different story. The fact is that even in that situation, you have a lot of prominent black people who are dying. And you wonder at it because I remember that when COVID just came in, when they didn't have all the knowledge and so on, that people like Mia Saban and all these people went to the COVID and they came out alive, all right? So that now today Nias can relate his experience and so on. But we've had a number of prominent black people go in there, nurses, businessmen, journalists, and all these people. And it seems as though once they get there, they go there to die. Yeah, they go there to die. All right? And I have made the point that somehow we get the sense, we have to get a sense of the numbers in terms of who are dying in relation to ethnicity in this population, to see whether the PPP is using COVID now as a weapon to basically eliminate black people from the society. We cannot underestimate the behavior of the PPP. We have said that in many African communities, they hold parties, they do things that, have mass gatherings, and they promote it. They go to the sports grounds and they encourage them to have all these activities. And it may allow for the proliferation of the disease in the African community. But when you go to you listen to people who have been to the hospital. It was related to me about one guy who had medical experience, all right? And every time they took medication to him, he wanted to see it. And from his knowledge, what they were giving him was basically to kill him, right? When he protested and began to make noise, the doctor came and said, man, it's the wrong person. The medication wasn't for him. They went to another patient who was next to him, but that patient was comatose, wasn't conscious and so on. And so they gave the injection to that patient, right? His relatives had to come from overseas and bringing stuff to clear up his lungs and so on, so that he could survive and talk about it. All right. Another experience of one woman who went there. She went there and spent 11 days. Relatives are not allowed to go to see the patients and so on. And the same way that she went in, the same clothes and everything that she went with, is the same way that she came out dead with. You understand? No attention was given to her. This is the report that we get. You see? The food that they're giving the people is also, the nurse that died the other day, the relatives reported that she had to bribe nurses to heat her food so that she could get hot meals and all of these things and so on. And yet Frank Anthony is coming to tell us, every time they get these reports that it is false, that they have adequate staff, that everything is okay, so people are going to lie basically for no reason, And I heard the former Dr. Karen Cummings making a point the other day that the medication that they should be buying to treat people with, that the government doesn't want to spend to buy it. So there is a deliberate, scheme to kill off people in this place. And that is why we have to wonder about the death by ethnicity, the numbers, to see where this is leading, and the number of infections and so on and where.
No, I think it is clear from all what I've been hearing is that the majority of persons who are dying from COVID is African Guyanese. I think that is a known fact. and that there is a larger percentage of African Guyanese
who are unvaccinated.
who are infected by the COVID aging. And there's also a large, but they will argue it is related to the fact that a large number of African Guyanese are also refusing to be
But
vaccinated.
that's another thing. That is another thing.
All right.
Just before you, because the other report that we get is that nurses, when people who are vaccinated go to the hospital and they die, they are ordering the nurses to change the information on their charts, so that they are reporting them as people who are unvaccinated that have died, when in fact
They are vaccinated.
they are vaccinated.
Yeah. I mean, and
You know?
once the government, once those information are accurate, it means that the government is deliberately tampering with information in violation of World Health Organization rules and protocol on the matter. You see, I don't know if I am willing at this point to say that the PPP is deliberately engaged in using COVID as a weapon against the African Guyanese community to eliminate our numbers. I don't know I am ready to say that. But what I sense is that the PPP is responding to the resistance against the mandatory measures in terms of the vaccination and in terms of the consequences that they're willing to implement to persons who refuse to take the vaccination. I think my sense is that, and I try to listen to them very carefully, my sense is that they're reaching a point where they're setting the stage to blame African people for the demise. Okay? And they will at some point argue that the extent to which African deaths are higher than other persons is because of the actions of African Guyanese community. I think they have reached this kind of cynical position. My overall judgment of the response to the COVID crisis is that, remember very early on this program when they came to power and they began to open up the country, we were at pains to point out, that that's just a short-term solution. And then when you open up the and the consequences of open up the country, and the justification they use is, I remember hearing them saying, if the APMU had remained in office, if the APMU remained in office, the whole country would close down, the economy would collapse. So they opened up the economy, and it led to free fall, and it led to now to this dangerous situation where the COVID pandemic in the country is getting uncontrollable. And I think they're panicking. I think my sense, my political judgment is that the PPP now is caught in this dilemma that they can't control effectively the pandemic, and they worry about the political consequences of this, because I'm telling you, if Guyanese start to die in the hundreds when the day come, this government can't survive. And I think that they're panicking, and instead of retreat and to engage in some form of self-criticism and try to generate cooperation with the opposition and civic society forces and all Guyanese to us approach this thing as a real national challenge, they're doing what they do best, resorting to the isolation in Freedom House, and they're cloaking themselves with all of the ethnic justifications and so, and they're panicking because I'm telling you, we don't have the capacity to deal with large numbers of persons turning up at the hospitals very soon, to get treatment. And I also hear, inconsistent with the point you made, that when persons are diagnosed with the virus, they send them home, to quarantine without any treatment. Persons tell me they even get an aspirin, they get no vitamins, no treatment, but tell them to go home and use some home remedy. They're even pointing them to to medication that they could buy in the private drugstores. I mean, I couldn't believe the level of recklessness, but more than one person who was affected with COVID told me that that is the experience. So they're not managing this thing, and this thing going to create a crisis that they can't control. I think they're panicking. But whatever is the outcome is the results of their own doing. I mean, it's unfortunate.
So, well, what can we say to the people now?
Well, we have to say to people, you have to, respect the protocols as far as you're comfortable with them. Wear your mask, sanitize, wash your hands, try to respect, social distancing. Try to deal with the vaccine in an objective way. I can't tell nobody to take a vaccine if they have great resolutions against taking the vaccine. It boils down to, to their personal choice, and they must know that they're risking their lives, and you have to weigh, your decision against that.
But if they're sending people home with no remedies, then I mean, people are suggesting a number of remedies online. People got to research. I mean, I went to the Amerindians are saying that, they've had COVID in their communities, but nobody died because they grow things like ginger and so on. And their ginger, they said it's
strong,
very, very strong. And so they have been using their own remedies to deal with it. So if boiling a lot of ginger or whatever the people are saying, if they're not giving you anything,
you got to try.
You got to try something.
But I can't understand. You got a pandemic, and persons are diagnosed with a. To this basic medicine, man. If a person is diagnosed with a problem, you must give them some basic treatment, man. You must send them home with some vitamin C, some multivitamin, some tonic, some antibiotic, even whatever. And if the government ain't got, you must give them a prescription and say you could get these, try to get these things at the pharmacies. Nothing they're giving the people.
Well, antibiotics don't really
I know.
work against viruses.
I am talking merely. I mean, whatever is your illness. I mean, you expect something they give you. I tell you or direct you in some somewhere. But you can't send people home with such a serious disease and leave them on their own.
Because when they go home too, I mean, I know of cases where people had their relatives in a house. They just carry the food and they put it on the steps because they are afraid to go into the. So if the person becomes seriously ill, I mean,
you're gonna die.
Because your relatives are even afraid to go into.
I mean, I was being told by a good friend of mine. He had a relative. Both of them came down. Husband and wife came down with the disease. She survived. Unfortunately, he didn't make it.
It's really
serious. And that place is a death house.
Yeah.
Don't hope not to have to go to that place, because your chances are very slim of coming out.
Yeah, but why should it be? I mean,
that's the story.
I can't understand it.
It's simple. Look, man, it's incompetence and political stubbornness. When a set of political leaders think they know it all, and they think they have to harness all the power and the authority and influence in their corner, in their theater, then you lose the capacity, of dealing with these problems, because you're not able to take advantage of the vast information and energies in the nation. And I think that's what happened to them.
Anyway, we just got to pray, like I said, whatever you have to do, just stick with the measures, and all the parties and so on that these guys like to keep in the backs of the villages and all these things. Just stay home, avoid them. It's not healthy for the community, and if a serious outbreak is to come, then you know that you're not going to receive the kind of medical attention that you should receive. And that your death will be counted as nothing. I mean, it may be counted as a plus for the PPP in one direction. So just take the measures to be safe and to live so that we can keep this struggle going. Alright, I want to thank you, Brother Ogun, for being here. We haven't touched a number of things. The cost of living is still a matter of
big
concern.
bothering people are asking us to talk
Even
about
building materials continue to skyrocket.
everything.
I went to buy some wood the other day and I almost got a heart attack when I found that the prices have almost doubled for wood and so on. I don't know how we're going to make out, but we have to struggle and to survive. Alright, we have also matters of education that we got to deal with and so on. Well, next week we'll be back to continue this course and to continue to highlight issues as they arise here in this supposedly beautiful land of ours. I want to say thank you for all those who are watching, and to say we'll be back next week, same time, same channel. Then we'll have another program of Walter Rodney Groundings, and do have a blessed night.